The story begins in the aftermath of the First World War. In 1924, Germany was economically devastated. In the small Bavarian town of Herzogenaurach, a young man named Adolf Dassler, who everyone called Adi, was trying to find a way to survive. Adi was an introvert. He was a quiet, obsessive tinkerer. While other men went out drinking, Adi sat in his mother's tiny laundry room with pieces of canvas, leather, and an old bicycle generator, trying to build something the world had never seen: specialized athletic shoes. Back then, athletes just wore heavy leather boots. Adi realized that if shoes were lighter and had spikes on the bottom, athletes could run faster. But Adi had a problem. He was a brilliant inventor, but he was painfully shy. He had no idea how to actually sell his shoes. Enter his older brother, Rudolf. Rudolf, or Rudy, was the exact opposite of Adi. Rudy was loud, extroverted, incredibly charming, and a natural-born salesman. He could sell ice to an Eskimo. The two brothers realized that together they were the perfect team. Adi would design the shoes in the back room, and Rudy would go out into the world and sell them. They officially founded the Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik, the Dassler brothers' shoe factory. Their business grew steadily, but their ultimate breakthrough came in 1936, during the Berlin Olympics. This was Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler was using the Olympics to prove his horrific theory of Aryan racial supremacy. But the Dassler brothers didn't care about politics. They cared about winning. In an incredibly dangerous and bold move, Adi Dassler packed a suitcase full of his custom spiked shoes, drove to the Olympic Village, and somehow sneaked into the American locker room. He found the American track star, Jesse Owens, and convinced him to wear the Dassler shoes. Jesse Owens went on to win 4 gold medals, completely destroying Hitler's racist narrative in front of the entire world. And he did it all wearing German shoes made by the Dassler brothers. Overnight, the Dassler brothers' shoe factory became a global sensation. Orders poured in from all over the world. They were rich, they were successful, and they were at the top of their game. But the money did not bring the brothers closer together. It only amplified their deep, underlying differences. And when the Second World War broke out, their fragile brotherhood was completely annihilated. When World War II erupted, both brothers joined the Nazi Party, a requirement for business owners at the time. But their experiences of the war were drastically different, and the paranoia began to set in. Rudy was convinced that Adi and Adi's wife, Keita, were plotting behind his back to steal the company. Adi was furious that Rudy was always trying to act like the absolute boss while doing none of the actual engineering. Their wives despised each other. The factory floor became a toxic war zone of passive-aggressive arguments. But the final, fatal blow to their relationship happened during a horrific Allied bombing raid in 1943. As the air raid sirens wailed, Adi and his wife ran into the town's designated bomb shelter. A few moments later, Rudy and his family ran into the exact same shelter. As Rudy walked in, the Allied bombers roared overhead. Adi, frustrated by the attack, muttered, "The dirty bastards are back again." Adi was talking about the Allied warplanes, but Rudy, consumed by his own paranoia and ego, was absolutely convinced that Adi was talking about him and his family. Rudy never forgave his brother for that sentence. From that moment on, it was pure, unadulterated hatred. As the war ended, things got even darker. The American forces occupied Germany and began the denazification process, hunting down passionate supporters of the regime. Rudy was arrested by American soldiers and sent to a prisoner of war camp. He was terrified he would be locked away forever. While in the camp, Rudy received a tip that the only reason the Americans had found him and knew about his business was because someone close to him had betrayed him. Someone had informed the Americans that Rudy was a dangerous Nazi. Rudy was absolutely certain that the informant was his own brother, Adi. He believed Adi had sent him to a prison camp just to take sole control of the shoe factory. In retaliation, while still rotting in the prison camp, Rudy told the American interrogators that Adi was the real Nazi mastermind, and that Adi had forced him to produce weapons instead of shoes. It was the ultimate betrayal. The brothers were actively trying to send each other to prison, or worse. The trust was dead. The brotherhood was completely destroyed. When Rudy was finally released from the camp in 1946, he returned to Herzogenaurach. But he couldn't even look at his brother. It was time to divide the empire. In 1948, Adi and Rudi officially dissolved the Dassler brothers' shoe factory. They split everything down the middle. They gathered the employees in the courtyard and told them to choose a side. The salesman, who loved Rudi's charisma, mostly went with him. The engineers and shoemakers, who respected Adi's technical genius, mostly stayed with him. Rudi crossed the river Aurach and set up a brand new factory on the other side of town. He needed a new name for his company. Taking the Ru from Rudolf and the Da from Dassler, he initially called his new company Ruda. Luckily, he soon realized that was a terrible name and changed it to something much faster and more aggressive: Puma. Back on the other side of the river, Adi did the exact same thing. He took his nickname, Adi, and the first 3 letters of his last name, Das. He combined them to create Adidas. To make sure his shoes were instantly recognizable on the feet of athletes from a distance, he painted 3 distinct white stripes on the side. And with that, the sneaker war officially began. Herzogenaurach was completely torn apart. You either worked for Adidas or you worked for Puma. And you absolutely did not mix. If you worked for Puma, you didn't buy bread from the Adidas baker. If you worked for Adidas, you didn't drink in the Puma pub. Kids from the Puma side of town were bullied if they crossed the river. Workers at the 2 factories were explicitly forbidden from speaking to each other. It was a bizarre corporate version of the Berlin Wall. And this intense, localized hatred quickly spilled out onto the global stage. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the 2 brothers fought a brutal war for global dominance. The strategy was simple: get your shoes on the feet of the most famous athletes on Earth, by any means necessary. Adi struck first. During the 1954 World Cup in Switzerland, the German national team wore Adidas boots with revolutionary screw-in studs. When it started raining during the final match, the German players swapped their studs for better grip, giving them a massive advantage over the Hungarian team. Germany won the World Cup in a miraculous upset, and Adidas became a global superpower overnight. Rudi was furious. Puma was falling behind. The brothers started showing up at the same Olympic Games, secretly sending suitcases full of cash to athletes' hotel rooms, desperately trying to bribe runners to switch shoes at the last minute. The corruption was rampant. But the most insane moment of this war came during the 1970 World Cup in Mexico. The biggest star in the world was the Brazilian legend, Pelé. Both Adidas and Puma knew that whoever signed Pelé would win the global marketing war, but they also knew that a bidding war for Pelé would bankrupt both companies. So, in a rare moment of sanity, the 2 warring companies made a secret peace treaty. They called it the Pelé Pact. They both officially agreed that neither Adidas nor Puma would try to sponsor Pelé. It was a ceasefire, but Rudi Dassler could not help himself. He wanted to destroy his brother. Rudi secretly approached Pelé behind Adidas's back and offered him a massive, unprecedented amount of money, over $120,000, just to wear Puma boots. But Rudi didn't just want Pelé to wear the shoes. He wanted the entire world to know he was wearing them. So, Rudi and Pelé came up with a brilliant, devious plan. Right before the kickoff of the quarterfinal match, with millions of people watching live on television around the globe, Pelé suddenly signaled the referee to stop. He asked for a moment to tie his shoe. Every single camera in the stadium zoomed in tightly on Pelé's feet. And right there, in the center of the television screen, in front of the entire world, Pelé slowly and deliberately tied the laces of his Puma boots. Adidas was absolutely blinded by the betrayal. The Pelé Pact was broken. It was the birth of modern sports marketing, and it escalated the hatred between the 2 companies to a point of no return. Adidas and Puma went on to conquer the world. They created a multi-billion-dollar athletic industry that dictates global fashion, music, and sports to this day. They built empires that outlasted wars, economic crashes, and shifting cultures. But Adolf and Rudolf Dassler never got to enjoy the peace of their success. In 1974, Rudolf Dassler was on his deathbed, dying of lung cancer. In a final attempt to end the decades of hatred, the local priest called Adi and asked him to come to the hospital to say goodbye to his older brother. Adi refused. He never went to the hospital. A few hours later, Rudolf died. 4 years later, in 1978, Adolf Dassler also passed away. Both brothers are buried in the same cemetery in their hometown of Herzogenaurach. But even in death, the hatred survived. Per their strict final wishes, their graves are placed as far away from each other as physically possible, at opposite ends of the cemetery. They built a $50 billion empire that united the world in sports, but they died without ever speaking a single word of forgiveness to each other. If you want to see another story about how massive egos and absolute arrogance destroyed a global empire, you need to watch our documentary on how Steve Jobs killed BlackBerry and Nokia in a single day. Click the video on your screen right now. Thanks for watching. This was Business Unmasked.